Is that going to convince anyone? No. If you don't know the answer to something, what would be much more powerful to say?
I don't know.
I don't know. What do you think about Eleanor Roosevelt's impact on American politics? I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that she, right? So I don't know. Clear, not I don't know. The next one, probably. Probably. I feel like this has to be said with a little bit of a hand gesture. Probably. It's probably. Probably. How many syllables are in that word?
3.
Yeah. So, probably. Do you think that having free time at lunch should be a valued part of the day? Probably. As opposed to probably. Right? Probably. How about have to? I have to go see my grandma. I have to go see my grandma.
I have to go.
I have to. Remember, in common speech, you can talk however you want. If the people you're communicating with are getting your message, I'm fine with that. These are things that you need to know when you're speaking in a more formal setting. Probably, have to are not words. They're phrases that we need to eliminate. Woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Woulda, shoulda, coulda.
I could have done my homework. I could have done my homework. I should have done my homework, but I didn't. Instead of, I would have done my homework, but I had a family crisis. I could have done my homework, but I didn't understand what the intention of the project was. I should have done my homework, but I didn't. Right? Would have, should have, could have. Much more impactful than woulda, shoulda, coulda. Usually, how many syllables does the word usually have in it? 4. Oh my gosh! And usually, if you spell it like this, has 2. So let's all practice saying usually. Usually, people say usually. And what did someone say in the last class? They say, oh no, that was a different one. They say probably instead of probably. Probably, right? Have you heard that? It's not a trolley. It's probably. Gonna. So let's say a judge asks you, did you consider adding this to your website? And you said, I was gonna. Right? I was going to. But I ran out of time. I was going to, but it was beyond the scope of my project. I was going to, not gonna.
I also have a suggestion.
Please.
Instead of using simple words like I don't know, do something else like I am not sure or I don't exactly have an opinion.
Right? You can always pick a more complicated phrase, certainly, but you definitely need to avoid these pitfalls of phrases that people tend to rely on in common speech, because we're really trying to make sure that when you're presenting, you're not speaking like you do to a friend. You're speaking to a judge, to an audience, maybe to a future employer, right? These are very valuable skills. Yes?
I've noticed that personally from past experiences, if a judge asks you a question and you reply, I don't know, it's automatically going with a minus 50% in their judge grade book. Even if you just say something and it goes on a complete and total tangent, they'll at least think that you know what you're talking about, even if you absolutely don't.
Interesting. Well, my concern would be, and I'm just going to give the counterpoint to that, I can see the problem with I don't know in general, but I would say if you're winging it and you really don't know the answer, most of the time the judge will know, right? And so you need to be careful that you don't just start rambling, and so then I was thinking, and you know, blah, 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 blah. So I agree with it if you have something relevant to share that you can make related, but it's important to answer the judge's questions clearly and succinctly. Maybe.
Well, just kind of like what I said, it's not exactly related, but something that my mom told me, if you're like, if somebody's asking you a question, or if you're having a conversation with someone about like something, for example, like an interview or something, if someone says, do you have any questions, you never want to say, no, I don't, I understand anything you want to figure out something.
And why do you think that is?
Because it shows them that you're interested.
You're engaged. That's exactly right. You need to make sure that they know you're plugged in. If you don't care, then they don't care, right? There are 2 more I want to point out. I actually said I I still have a problem with gonna, but I also have a problem with wanna. I want to share with you, not I wanna, and then can't ya. Can't you just see the excitement on their faces? Can't you just see the excitement on their faces? I know. So, any questions about diction, volume, pace? Got those covered? We talked about eye contact. You notice that when I'm speaking, am I looking down? Am I looking at you? Right. What am I doing with my body when I'm speaking to you? Has anyone noticed? What am I doing? That's exactly right. So part of the time I'm standing here, and part of the time I move forward, and sometimes I move back, and sometimes I'll move laterally. Normally I move laterally more often, but I don't get like getting blinded by the light or tripped by the wire. But it's important if you're going to move around in a presentation that it's mindful movement. You're not going to get any points if you're just going to be talking and someone's going to be watching you as you're moving. And yeah, I'm moving for the sake of movement, but it really looks like I'm just pacing. So this is not mindful movement. This is mindful movement, and then when I decide to make a point, maybe I'll move a little bit closer. But as I'm finished with the point, I may move back into a place of stillness, right? Mindful movement. The last thing I want to talk about is your sharing. You're sharing information. You're sharing as a presenter, you're sharing as a performer. So the idea is that I'm not up here by force. I'm up here because I have information I want to share with you. So think of it as an opportunity to share what you know and what you believe in and what's important to you. Any questions about that? No? All right. Few more brief questions, and then we're going to end with one more tongue twister. Speaking about talking to the judges. If judges ask you a question, what's the first thing you need to do before answering? What?
Breathe.
Breathe, yes. Thank you. Breathe and think. That's exactly right. Breathe and think. Because if you speak without breathing, you're going to run out of breath. And if you speak without thinking, you're not going to know what you're talking about. You're going to run out of words. That's exactly right. The last thing I would say when you're, any other ideas about what's important when you're talking to a judge?
I've noticed that sometimes if you do like basic courtesy, like if you're sitting down and they're standing, it doesn't look the most respectful. So get up, offer them a seat. If it doesn't even matter if they say yes or no. Even in their mind they'll think, oh, this person is really, really nice. He offered me a seat. And when you're speaking, keep an enthusiastic tone.
Energy, absolutely.
If you're referencing something like a board or a presentation, occasionally just move your hand and point to a specific slide so they don't have to search their way through all that.
Exactly. You want to make sure with that open body position that we talked about, right? So let's say I'm pointing out these phrases, and I want to tell you about wanna. I'm not going to be like this. So you can see here that wanna should be want to. I'm going to say you'll see that wanna should be want to. Open body position, just like you were saying. You're pointing it out, you know exactly where you're going.
When they're asking you a question or when they're talking, if you look at them and if you nod, and if you look like you're actually thinking about what they're saying,
Yes.
I think they enjoy that.
Yes, and you should not just be connecting for that reason, but you should actually be thinking about what they're saying, right? So not just pretending to smile and nod, but you're actually taking the time to process what they're saying. That's exactly right. So I want to do one more tongue twister with you. Oh, and here's a website if you're interested in getting some more tips about speaking in public. quickanddirtytips.com/business-career/public speaking/diction. If you're at all interested in that. There are also a ton of YouTube videos, as I'm sure you know. Lots of them are crummy, but some of them are very good. I know it's hard to pull yourself away from the regularly scheduled garbage that you're looking at on YouTube, but maybe you'll find something.
Excuse me.
How did you know there was?
The shade charts are so interesting. All right, one last one. I'm going to read this one to you, and then we're all going to practice it. But I want you to hear what's important. Not only volume, diction, pace, and energy, but this one has a lot of what I call sloppy consonants and diphthongs. So shh, shh. These are really hard ones. Do you like fresh fish? It's just fine at Finney's Diner. Finney also has some fresher fish that's fresher and much finer. But his best fish is his freshest fish. And Finney says with pride, the finest fish at Finney's is my freshest fish, French fried. So, don't order the fresh or the fresher fish at Finney's if you're wise. You'll say, fetch me the finest French fried, freshest fish that Finney fries.
Oh my God.
Dang.
So, what makes it possible for me to speak quickly and clearly? Practice, moving my mouth, breath, diction, all the things. What was that?
Bless you.
Yeah, maybe. So if you want to practice this a few times slowly to nail those consonants, great. And then if you decide to speed it up, do you like fresh fish? It's just fine if Finney's diner. Finney also has some fresher fish that's fresher and much finer. You can try it. But you need to make sure that you're going to nail all of your consonants. So break up into groups once again. Someone you didn't work with last time. Someone you didn't work with last time.
So, you guys gotta find something on the last. You can't be